Chapter 2, Ty's Secret.
At the end of July, Ty went through his own operation. He received a cochlear implant in his right ear to help him hear. While everyone else was excited at his prospects for improved communication, Bo was not. This was especially true the morning after his bag-changing trauma. That episode had left Bo with only 4 hours of sleep, from which he was awakened by his brother's loud, high-pitched voice. "I am taking the camera," Ty yelled at his mother, who was shuffling around down in the family room. Shorter than Bo and slightly chunky, Ty's deafness had focused him on visual activities like computers, art, movies with closed captioning, and photography. He liked sports well enough, but he didn't bother himself with the details. He preferred brute force to Bo's finesse. A see your opponent, destroy your opponent kind of guy. It was simpler that way. Bo rolled over and glared at his younger brother. Ty's bedhead was a weed field in full bloom. "Why can't he sign everything like he used to?" Bo muttered. He knew that if he'd shouted at Mom like that, she'd be jumping up the stairs at him. But Ty was still getting used to his implant, and he didn't yet hear or say everything just right. He had relied on sign language and regular hearing aids until now, but he really liked the new louder, clearer sounds. He would often say that, before the implant, he could barely hear the rain splash, and now he could hear it fall. Yet, he was a long way from knowing all the words, and he still had to get a handle on the volume and pitch of his voice. Worst of all for Bo, Ty would taunt him with the implant, like now he could hear, so Bo had to talk to him. He kept saying he had something urgent to tell him. A few days earlier, Bo had almost given in and listened. Thankfully, his best friend Jesse had showed up with a new miniature rocket needing to be launched right now and save the day. As ticked off as he was at Ty on this morning, Bo was strangely upbeat. Then his swimsuit at the foot of the bed reminded him. It was Friday and the year's first teacher prep day, so no school. The Dunns were going to the ocean, taking along Jesse and Ty's best friend Jonah. Great white sharks had been seen off Stinson Beach earlier in the week, so the boys were hoping to get a glimpse of one of the beasts. The trip had been Abby's idea to get the guys out of the house, but Bo had told her he didn't want to go without Jesse. She'd agreed, so then, of course, Ty had to invite Jonah. It was a copycat move, but it was working out great for Bo. He'd get Jesse, and Jonah would be there to keep Ty occupied. Bo wandered downstairs to find out when they were leaving. "In about 15 minutes, said his slender mother as she parked the cooler by the front door, her shoulder-length red hair falling past her freckled, worn cheeks. She turned and sat on the cooler, then managed a grin as she looked up at Bo. "By the way, I told your dad to bring the boogie boards in case you guys are allowed in the water." "Awesome, then I'll bring my new wetsuit too," said Bo. The water at Stinson Beach was liquid ice, and he figured the wetsuit would help him keep warm and help hide the bag. Abby asked him to please tell Ty not to bring his camera because it would get ruined in the sand and sea. Bo rolled his eyes, climbed back upstairs, and relayed the message. "I'm taking the waterproof one Mom got me from the grocery store," Ty said in his heavy, deaf accent. "It will work good." As Bo looked at the device lying on the floor, it struck him that it had no zoom lens like Ty's Nikon. A shark would have to stop and pose on the beach 10 feet away for him to get a decent shot. "Look, if you're really going to all this trouble, you should probably—" Ty turned off his implant processor, looked away, and went back to his packing. This tune you out thing was becoming a habit, and it frustrated Bo no end. He hurriedly slipped into his t-shirt, swimsuit, and flip-flops, and then stormed out of the bedroom with his backpack. He stuffed his wetsuit into it on the way to the bathroom. Once there, he threw in a first aid kit, scissors, gauze, white tape, and a brand new tube of Neosporin. As he left the bathroom, he noticed his mom had already cleaned up his mess from the night before. How embarrassing, he thought, shaking his head. Bo hustled downstairs, grabbed a bagel and a glass of juice from the kitchen since he'd overslept and missed breakfast, and then made straight for the SUV. His dad was shoving in the boogie boards and closing the tailgate. Ty came down a minute later and joined Bo on the middle bench. Abby planted herself in the front passenger seat while Blake climbed behind the wheel. And it quickly became clear this trip was not going to go as Bo had planned. Blake was turning the key when Abby's cell phone rang. It was Jessie. She handed Bo the phone. "My mom isn't letting me go," Jessie said. "Things were fine until I walked out with my BB gun. That made her crazy. She thought I was actually going to hunt sharks." As Bo told the others what Jessie had said, Abby shook her head. "A BB gun? At the beach?" She glared at Bo. Then she sighed as she turned back toward the front and muttered, "Jessie will always be Jessie." Being reminded his best friend was an out-of-control kind of guy just made things worse for Bo. He spiked the phone onto the seat next to him. It bounced onto the floor. "Oh well," said Ty as he scooped up the device and handed it to Abby. "You still has me." "Okay, and that means I have what exactly?" said Bo with a scowl. "At least I have Jonah," Ty said, whispering and signing. As Blake backed out of the driveway, the phone rang again. This time, it was Jonah. Abby listened for a minute, then told him to get better and hung up. "Jonah can't go either," she said, turning around toward Ty and speaking slowly while she signed. "He hurt his ankle wrestling with his brother last night, and it's all swollen this morning. He said he's sorry, and he'll see you at school on Monday." Now it was Ty's turn to be disappointed, only he didn't seem that disappointed to Bo. He actually seemed more relieved than upset. Bo still couldn't pass up a chance to rub it in, though. He put his face right in front of Ty's and laughed super loud. Abby slapped him on the shoulder and pushed him toward his side of the bench. For Bo, the mind-numbing 90-minute drive was like coming out of anesthesia all over again. His dad listened to a baseball game on the radio. The Giants had a day game in New York, so it was on early in California. His mom sorted through bills. Ty tried to do homework, but he seemed distracted. He spent most of his time looking straight ahead, blinking often, and glancing at Bo every couple of minutes. For his part, Bo had finished his homework the night before, so he could chill with Jessie today. He stared out the side window, thoroughly bored. Out of the blue, Ty tapped him on the shoulder. "I'm sorry for making you feel bad about Jessie," he signed. "Forget it," said Bo, rolling his eyes and looking away. Ty waited a few seconds and then tapped him on the shoulder again. Annoyed, Bo looked back at him. Ty was wearing the same intense expression he'd had a few days earlier when he absolutely had to talk about something urgent. Only this time, Bo was trapped, with no Jessie to rescue him. Ty leaned toward Bo and whispered a question. "Do you do dreams?" Even for Ty, this was a strange one. Bo chalked it up to his hearing and speech issues. "Look, I have dreams," Bo said, correcting him. "We all have dreams." Bo barely glanced at Ty, refusing to believe this is what was so important. "No, do you do dreams?" Ty said, louder this time. Bo turned away. "I have dreams, but I do dreams too," Ty said, not letting it go. Bo pulled out his iPod and headphones, signaling Ty to back off. Before he could slip them on, though, Ty said something that piqued his interest. Instructions comes to me in some of my dreams that makes me have to choose things and then do stuff on purpose. It's like somebody wants me to get something done, not just lie there with my foggy mind wandering all over the place while I fall to sleep." "I know what he's talking about," thought Bo, glancing back around. "Kind of like you're supposed to learn something?" he asked. "Yes, and it's not all my dreams, only some of them," said Ty. "It's like sometimes I'm leading and other times I'm following, but I'm learning and doing good things on purpose. And I remember all the little details when I wake up." Regular dreams don't work like that. It had been a long time since Bo had dialed into Ty. It had been months since they'd had a conversation even this long. But Ty was describing what Bo had been experiencing, and he had to know more. Bo leaned forward to see if his mother was picking up any of this. She had dozed off, having spent half the night on the internet and looking through magazines, pulling things together for the wedding planning she'd be doing with Madison over the weekend. Then Bo sat up and looked in Blake's rearview mirror to see if he was watching them. He was lost in his game. So Bo turned back to Ty and whispered, pronouncing carefully, as loudly as he dared, and signing as much as he could to make sure Ty understood. The same thing's been happening to me, okay? At first, there was just a voice. Somebody named Kale something, and then there were like visions. But then I got more used to them. Are you used to them yet? No, it just started happening a few weeks ago, said Ty. I don't want to tell no one about it. People already avoid me because I'm deaf. Wow, this didn't start happening to me until just before my last surgery. You started way younger than I did. That's because I am more smarter than you, said Ty, smiling. I learn faster and I understands things better. Bo slumped back in his seat to think, to get his mind around this. He was stunned Ty might be going through visions like he was. He couldn't help wondering if Ty was hearing the bad voice too. He decided to leave that for another time, unless Ty brought it up. Do you think they mean anything? He asked finally. I don't know, said Ty, but I know they help me figure things out and do better. Do yours do that sometimes? They did, but Bo didn't want to admit it. He was already further into the conversation than he wanted to get. Try as he might, though, he couldn't escape his curiosity. Well, they help me be more confident, braver, Bo sighed. If I have a vision where I have to conquer something new, the next day I'm like, yeah, braver. Braver? Asked Ty. I mean, I'm not afraid to do things like take a stab at calculus or talk to Jesse's sister or learn new signs. It's like I feel I can be successful after those dreams. And I don't always feel that way. Same here, said Ty. It feels pretty good, huh? Again, Bo hesitated. Ty was right, though. It felt good. Really good. Abby snorted herself awake, almost snapping her head off. She looked back at her sons, her arms outstretched as high as they could go inside the SUV, and her blue eyes fresher after her brief nap. How are you guys holding up? She yawned. Okay, said Bo, but I don't remember this ride taking so long. Abby then glanced at Blake. More Jonah Hill than Chris Hemsworth, his paunch was a basketball tethered to the front of his otherwise skinny body, and what hair he had left was retreating swiftly toward his ears. He leaned forward as he drove, and he was a million miles away with that game on. Abby waved her hand right in front of his wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't even blink. How can he drive like that, she signed. What an idiot. She turned her gaze forward again. As she did, she adjusted her posture and looked down and groaned as a stack of bills and magazines slid to the floor. Now that she was awake, there was no way Bo could continue his conversation with Ty. In a way, that was a relief. But he was still intrigued. He decided to bring it up again later when the two were by themselves. Bo slipped his headphones on and cranked up the volume on his iPod. He lost himself in the music and sang along, drumming the bench seat to the rhythm. He was really getting into it when Ty tapped him on the shoulder again. Bo slid one of the speakers off his ear, looked at his little brother, and signed, "What?" "You sounds like a deaf person when you sing with those things on," said Ty, laughing. "Shut up, dude," said Bo. He defiantly started singing again, quieter this time. Mimicking Bo, Ty took out the iPad his dad had bought him after his surgery and plugged it into his cochlear implant. He seemed to like music, though Bo didn't know exactly how it sounded to him. But liking music was something Bo understood. He watched Ty fiddle with the volume and then sit back and listen. After a few minutes, Ty dozed off, his head lowered and nodding. Suddenly, Ty sat straight up, eyes still closed, as if trying to escape a bad dream. He twisted and swayed from side to side until he banged his forehead against the side window. Bo cringed, but this was too cool for him to look away. The collision with the window brought Ty out of it. He never looked over at Bo and didn't notice him watching. His eyebrows just scrunched together and froze that way as he looked off to one side, like he was trying to figure something out. He shook his iPod and turned the volume down and then back up, his body still tense. Finally, he unhooked the device from his implant, looked around the SUV, and sat back, seeming more puzzled than ever. Clearly upset, he never really relaxed for the rest of the trip. Not that he should have.
End of chapter.